Hey, everybody. Welcome. Fine Free and Tyler in the chat. How's it going, fellas? Thank you, Tyler, for the music, by the way. The 2-minute cuts are long enough because that's the whole thing with drone music, is you can kind of just put the two-minute cuts next to each other and the sounds bleed in. So for like a 10-minute video, you just put it all in there and it all kind of bleeds together. Hey, Surf in the chat, howdy. Everyone can hear me good? Everyone can see the screen? We're all ready? Let's jump right into it, shall we? So we got chapter 42. Probably the longest chapter in the book. This is going to be a long one, boy, so this is going to be like a 5-parter or something. So we'll just go and we'll just comfortably break here and there. Maybe we'll go for an hour or two and we'll just grind up against this chapter, see what happens. But we're coming to the end of Beelzebub. We're coming to the end of his his tales. And in his tales, we're also coming to the end of his sojourn on Earth. Like, he descended to Earth, was it 6 times? And this is the last time he was on Earth. And his last appearance, I suppose, will be in America. So let's see what he gets up to. Let's see what he gets up to. He was in Europe before, having fun, and now he's coming to America. Let's see what Beelzebub thinks of these Americans. So, chapter 42, Beelzebub in America. 2 Diagnostics later, when the inter-system ship Karnak had resumed its falling. So remember from the last chapter, he was actually in the middle of a story of him and his bro in like the scientists' mount, that they were in a secret science base in the middle of a mountain in Uzbek or something. And he was talking about the story, and then immediately they got interrupted because their ship was finally reached their destination. So we're back on the ship. Oh, Northseeker in the chat, talking to a Gurdjieff group tomorrow. Wish me luck. Yeah, good luck, Northseeker. Tell them you've been going through Beelzebub, and they'll be impressed. Also, don't forget to gauge the group. The way you always gauge a Gurdjieff group, a 4th way group, is ask one of the guys, ask the leader, hey, what's the difference between self-remembering and self-observation? And if they don't have an answer, that's a bad sign. Just walk out. But yeah, no, good luck with that. Hopefully it's a good one. You gotta crystallize those higher being bodies, baby. Now, so 2 Diagnostics is a couple of hours, but like in objective timekeeping, so who knows how long that is. So that it resumed its falling, or it resumed its travel, the ship Karnak that they're on. And the confirmed followers of our respected Mullah Nasser-ad-Din had again sat down in their usual seats. That's interesting. The confirmed followers, so supposedly Beelzebub, they follow the teachings of Nasser-ad-Din. Yeah, that's the key, Northseeker. Self-remembering versus self-observation. That distinction is literally the base, the foundation of the 4th way. If they don't know the difference between those two things, it ain't a 4th way school. Again, sit down. So Hassien once more turned to Beelzebub with the following words. We're starting off with the Hassien line today. My dear grandfather, may I remind you, as you bade me about the 3-brained beings of the planet Earth, about those, how are they called? About beings who breed and exist on the diametrically opposite side of the place, where contemporary terrestrial civilization is flourishing. About those 3-brained beings there, who, as you say, are very great devotees of the foxtrot. That's what Americans are, devotees of the foxtrot. Or would it be nowadays, devotees of the twerk? Ah, about those Americans. Yes, that's it, about those Americans, joyously exclaimed Hassian. Of course, I remember. I did indeed promise to tell you a little also about the contemporary queer ducks there. Americans, queer ducks indeed. They're all just queer ducks. And Beelzebub began thus. I happened to visit that part of the surface of your planet now called North America. Okay. Is it Canada or is it America proper? Or the USA? Just before my final departure from that solar system, so this is literally his swan song, he goes to North America. I went there from my place of existence on that planet, namely from the city Paris on the continent of Europe. And so this like mirrors like Gurdjieff's time as well. You know, he comes to Paris and then he goes to see his New York groups. He goes to meet Orage. So from the continent of Europe, I sailed there on a steamship, according to the custom of all contemporary what are called dollar holders, and arrived in the capital of North America, in the city of New York, New York, or as it is sometimes called there, the city of the melting pot of the races of the earth. A synthesis, if you will. He went to Gotham. From the pier, I went straight to a hotel called The Majestic. Ooh. Confirmed, Gurdjieff went to Trump Tower, which had been recommended to me by one of my Paris acquaintances, and which for some reason or other was additionally thought not officially... wait. They're not officially called Jewish. Huh? Having settled in this majestic hotel, I went the same day to look up a certain Mr. there, who also had been recommended to me by still another of my Paris acquaintances. By this word Mr., every being of the male sex is called on that continent who does not wear what is called a skirt. Well, clearly he's never met a lesbian at this point in time. So True the King in the chat, North, some advice. Oh, True King giving North Seeker advice on meeting Gurdjieff groups. Say as little as possible. At first they look for the ability to sit quietly. If you're rejected, keep in contact and keep trying. They will make you earn your place in a group. Yeah, that's probably better advice. Let them test you. Don't test them immediately. Oh, fine free dropping 50. Thank you for dedication to this content. I have acquired a vibrometer. Oh, damn, okay. And thank you for the 50 US vibe. Fine, damn. That's what keeps the channel alive. So that's what keeps my crappy $20 ring light going, baby. Hell yeah. Let's go. So he went to meet a mister, a non-gendered person who wears pants. When I found this mister, to whom I had a letter of introduction, no one does that anymore. No one does letters of introductions anymore. Such sad. He, as is proper to every genuine American businessman, was up to his eyes in innumerable, as is said there, dollar businesses. Okay, so this guy was a rich boy. Fine for a long time coming. Thank you, Fine. No, thank you very much, Fine. I think I might as well remark now at the very beginning of my elucidations about these Americans. Okay, let's see what he says. That those three-brained beings there, especially the contemporary ones, who constitute the root population on this part of the surface of your planet, are in general almost all occupied only with these dollar businesses. I'm gonna guess, without looking at what comes next, in this chapter, he's gonna remark about how Americans smell of gasoline and diesel, and are obsessed with, like, going fast, maybe. What else is, like, a generic thing that Americans like? Maybe, like, an obsession with science and technology. He's already mentioned they're materialistic, and they go over dollars, and they lose their lack for religion. Unless they go into religion, then it's too much religion. and they have a fanaticism for it. But we'll see what he says about that, because he's in New York, he's in the metropolitan, he's in the, what do you call it, the cosmopolitan center of America. He's not going to go to like the Bible Belt, so he may not get that. But I want to say, is he going to comment on like the smell of celluloid and gasoline or something? I just have this feeling he's going to comment on that. This is what like continental Europeans, how they saw Americans. They're just obsessed with like technology. Because that's, America really, countries have their own folk tales and myths. Whereas you could say the mythology of America is sci-fi. Like even, all the great works of sci-fi has come out of America in the previous, like, we have Star Wars and Star Trek. But even back in the day, in books, that's where Frank Herbert, Dune, and Robert Heinlein with Starship Troopers, the War of the Worlds. A mythology of America, the New World, is sci-fi. The mythology of America isn't something in the past, it's about looking into the future. Gonna diss bankers and stockmen. Yeah, and so there's this weird inversion of America, how their roots are in the future instead of in the past. So I'm really interested to see if he says something about that. So anyway, but he's mainly saying they're businessmen, they're all businessmen obsessed with the dollars. On the other hand, with trades and professions, indispensable in the process of being existence, exclusively only those beings are occupied among them who have gone there from other continents temporarily, and for the purpose, as is said, of earning money. So they get foreign workers, and then all of the real Americans are just businessmen who trade stocks. Even in this respect, the surrounding conditions of ordinary being existence among your contemporary favorites, chiefly among those breeding on this continent, have been transformed, so to say, into tra-la-la-la, ooh-la-la-la-la, or as our respected teacher Mullah Nazaruddin would define it, a soap bubble that lasts a long time only in a quiet medium. So he's basically saying, this is very interesting, it's an unnatural environment where you get these soap bubble-like people who are shiny, and shiny on the outside but empty on the inside. I like that description. The beings breeding in America are just people who can be described as tra-la-la, la-la-la, ooh, la-la-la-la. Like, that describes every single American you'll ever meet. Every American on TikTok is basically that expression. Among them, well, on TikTok, not anymore, am I right, guys? Now, among them, there are, at the present time, these surrounding conditions of ordinary collective existence have already become such that if, for some reason or other, the specialist professionals of all the kinds necessary for their ordinary collective existence should cease to come to them from the other continents to earn money, then it is safe to say that within a month the whole established order of their ordinary existence would completely break down. So it's an unnatural existence that they've made for themselves. They've made something completely unsustainable, and Gurdjieff foresaw it 100 years ago. Since there would be none among them who could even so much as bake bread. You done goofed, Americans. You didn't focus on self-sustainability. The chief cause of the gradual resulting of such an abnormality there among them is, on the one side, the law established by themselves in respect of the rights of parents over their children, and on the other hand, the institution in schools for children of what is called a dollar savings bank, together with the principle of implementing in children a love for such dollars. Yeah. Crimdim in the chat finally caught another one. Hey, welcome Crimdim. Internet Explorer here as well. He foresaw the Trump meme coin. He definitely foresaw that Americans are obsessed with meme coins. I mean, that's like, I guess in schools nowadays, they'd all be talking about meme coins and Bitcoin, and we just got to get into it, lads. Become entrepreneurs. Become Sigma male octillionaires, guys. That's what school teaches nowadays. Thanks to this, and to still various other peculiar external conditions of ordinary existence, also established by themselves, just this love of dollar businesses and of dollars themselves has become in the common presence of each of the native inhabitants of this continent who reaches responsible age, the predominant urge during his responsible what is called feverish existence. That is why each one of them is always doing dollar business, and moreover, always several of them at once. Although the aforesaid Mr., to whom I had a letter of introduction, was also very busy with these dollar businesses, he nevertheless received me very cordially. When he read the letter of introduction, I presented to him a strange process immediately I presented to him, when he read the letter of introduction I presented to him, a strange process immediately began in him, which has already been noticed even by certain of your favorites. It having also become inherent in your contemporary favorites in general, and which they call unconscious preening. What does preening mean? I know he's going to describe it, but I want to, does that mean he subconsciously is, testing him or judging him or something? Preen, a person devote effort to making oneself look attractive. Okay. Yeah, so I think, it's this thing of, businessmen look down on everybody, but then it's who's this guy? And then you're looking down on someone, but then it's oh, this person's a famous person. When you look down on someone and then, I don't know, you realize that they're actually a person of interest, and then it just changes, and then it's oh, hello, I didn't know you were someone special. It's like this. I think what he's getting at is he got the letter of introduction, it's oh, this man's a mystic. And then unconsciously started oh, I need to look good around this person or puff himself up. And if that's what it seems like he's saying. Okay, let's see what he says. And this same process proceeded in him, because in the letter I presented, the name of a certain other acquaintance of mine, also a Mr., was mentioned, who in the opinion of many of this Mr., was also considered, as they call him back there, a damn clever fellow, that is to say, a dollar expert. So what is this? Unconscious preening would be he felt insecure, and unconsciously he needed to, start puffing himself up. And be In spite of his having been entirely seized with this inherency, proper to your contemporary favorites, he nevertheless, as he talked with me, gradually calmed down, okay. And eventually he informed me that he was ready to place himself entirely at my disposal. Suddenly, however, he remembered something, whereupon he added that to his profound regret, owing to circumstances over which he had absolutely no control, he could not possibly oblige me that day, but not until the following day, because he was extremely busy with important affairs. And indeed, with the best will in the world, he could not have done so, for these unfortunate Americans who are always governed by these dollar businesses of theirs can do what they please only on Sundays, whereas it just happened that the day I went to see him was not a Sunday. So the guy was like, I love you, bro. We should totally connect, totally do a business together, but I'm busy at the moment. You didn't get me on a Sunday. I've just gotta attend to business. Please come back, lol. There on that continent, all dollar and other businesses depend never upon the beings themselves. On the contrary, your favorites there always themselves depend entirely on the businesses of theirs. So it's not that the business depends on the people depend on the business. Very interesting, actually. Because that's just it. It's like if someone goes bankrupt, it destroys their life. Whereas in another way, previously a business is what? It's like a blacksmith owns a smithy, and if he has to close the smithy down or he loses money, he just goes somewhere else and starts a new smithy. He's has mastery, and he's independent in a sense. His business is dependent on him. But in America, there's some kind of weird inversion. And that has bled out into the rest of the world. In short, the day not being a Sunday, this genuine American mister was unable to do as he pleased, so he was a slave to his business. Namely, go along with me and introduce me to the people necessary to me. And we had, therefore, to agree to meet the following morning at a defined place on the famous street. They're called Broadway. Alrighty. They're going to Broadway. Gurdjieff on Broadway. Let's go. This street, Broadway, is the foremost and principal street not only in this New York, but as is said there, is the longest street in any of the large contemporary cities of your planet. So, I guess Vegas hadn't been built yet? No. So I set off there on the next day as the automobile taxi in which I drove to this place happened not to come from one of Mr. Ford's factories. I arrived too soon, and consequently this Mr. was not there yet. While awaiting him, I began strolling about, but as all the New York, what are called brokers, take their constitutional before their famous quick lunch, just in this part of the street, Broadway, the jostling in this crowded place became so great that in order to escape it, I decided to go and sit down somewhere in some spot from where I could see the mister I was awaiting to arrive. I was awaiting arrive. A suitable spot seemed to be a neighboring typical restaurant there, from the windows of which all passerbys could be seen. So he comes to meet the mister, the businessman's not there, so he goes across the street and waits in a restaurant. And he's going to people watch. I must say, by the way, that there on that planet of yours, there are not so many restaurants in the places of existence of any other group of your favorites as there are in New York. I wonder if that's still the case after COVID. They particularly abound in the main section, and moreover, the proprietors of these restaurants, there are chiefly Armenians, Greeks, and Russian Jews. Okay. Now, my boy, in order that you may rest a little from active mentation. Bruh. I wish for a while to confine myself entirely to the form of mentation of our dear teacher, Mullah Nashereddin, and to talk about a certain, in the highest degree, original custom which has prevailed during the last few years in these contemporary New York restaurants. Yeah, my boys. Now, my boy. Inasmuch as the production, important, and consumption of what are called alcoholic liquids have recently been strictly prohibited to the ordinary beings by the power-possessing beings of this group. So he's going to talk about prohibition. And corresponding injunctions have also been given to those beings there upon whom the power-possessing beings rest their hope for their own welfare. It is now supposed to be almost impossible for the ordinary beings there to obtain such liquids. At the same time, in these New York restaurants, various alcohol liquids called arak, dosico, scotch, whiskey, benedictine, vodka, Grand Marnier, and many other different liquids. I would love to try some Grand Marnier. Is that going to be like rum? Are these like slang words for like other things? Definitely scotch and whiskey, I know. Benedictine. Never heard of a liquor called that. I don't know, is Grand Marnier like a rum brand back then or something? Anyway. Under every possible kind of label, and made exclusively only on what are called old barges, lying at sea off the shores of that continent, are to be had in any quantity you please. Oh, looks like they've got the, the seasteading thing, admiral law? Like there's the law of the lands, but if you go out into the sea and start distilling alcohol, it's technically not illegal. Oh, Grand Marnier, ye orange liquor. Okay, so that's what orange liquor. So it's a different type of, like a whiskey or a brandy or something. Interesting. So the very tismus of the said practice lies in this, that if you point your fourth finger, is that going to be the pinky or is that going to be the pointer finger? Point your fourth finger and covering one half of your mouth with the right palm under the name of any liquid of you fancy, then then immediately, without more words, that liquid is served at your table, only in a bottle purporting to be lemonade or famous French vichy. Okay. So then so that's how you do it in Prohibition times. You're just like, yeah, I'll have a... And they're like, yes, sir. And then they give you a lemonade, and it's very clever, very clever. They give you a whiskey in a coffee mug. Now try, with all your might, to exert your will, and to actualize in your presence a general mobilization of your perceptive organs, so that without missing anything at all, you may absorb and transubstantiate in yourself everything relating to just how these alcoholic liquids I have enumerated are prepared at sea on old barges off the shores of that continent. I regret very much that I missed making myself thoroughly familiar with all these details of this contemporary terrestrial science. All I managed to learn was that into all the recipes for these preparations, the following acids enter: sulfuric, nitric, and muriatic acids? Never heard that one before. Hold up. Give it to me, Doc. Hydrochloric acid, also known as okay, so it's hydrochloric acid. So, wait, sulfuric, nitric, and hydrochloric. Okay, cool. NY Boostor, yeah. Damn straight cactus. And most important of all, the incantation of the famous contemporary German professor Kischmenhoff. I guess that's a reference. This last ingredient, namely Professor Kischmenhoff's incantation for alcoholic liquids, is delightfully intriguing, and it is concocted so it is said as follows. First of all, there must be prepared according to any old recipe already familiar to specialists. Is Gurdjieff like teaching us how to brew illegal liquids in Prohibition times in this sacred book, Beelzebub's Tales? He's got a manual for brewing, illegally brewing liquor. Okay, so according to an old recipe already familiar to specialists in the business, 1,000 bottles of liquid, precisely 1,000 bottles, must be prepared. Because if there should be merely one bottle more or one bottle less, the incantation won't work. So is this a magic incantation for making 1,000 bottles of brew? This is some secret moonshine recipe in Beelzebub's Tales. What would you, if we like started a little liquor business, us boys here in the chat, Richard Ruack's Brewing, and we made a Beelzebub's wine, what would we call Beelzebub's Moonshine? What would be a catchy name for it? Moonshine sends you to self-remember. Beyond self-remembering. Gurdjieff's Brew. God, there's got to be some good lines. Anyway, these 1,000 bottles, and with just a limited time, we only make 1,000 bottles for each brew. Sell them online. Order now. Gurdjieff's Distillery. So these 1,000 bottles must be placed on the floor, and then quietly beside them a single bottle of any genuine alcoholic liquid existing anywhere there must be placed and kept there for a period of 10 minutes. Gurry's Goose. High cylinder. Hey, that's a good one. Higher cylinder brew. But of any genuine must be placed and kept there for a period of 10 minutes, at the end of which time, very slowly and quite indispensably, while scratching the right ear with the left hand, one must utter with certain pauses this said alcoholic incantation. Upon this, not only are the contents of all the 1,000 bottles instantly transformed into precisely that alcoholic liquid contained in the said single bottle, but every bottle of the 1,000 even acquire the same label borne by that one bottle of genuine alcoholic liquid. Oh, he's just doing straight magic to get this. This is an instruction. The Fifth Way. Oh my god, that would be a great name for a liquor. You just, and Tyler's one, Cherry Erkkrodipian. I wonder, like, just take one of the random names, like Triamazi Camno wine or something. Among the congeries of this unprecedented German professor, Kishminoff, there are, as I learned, several indeed most amazing ones. This most famous German professor, a specialist in this branch, started, as is said, inventing these remarkable congeries of his quite recently. That is to say, in the early years of the last great general European process of reciprocal destruction there, when a food crisis supervened in his fatherland, Germany, he, sympathizing with the plight of his compatriots, invented his first conjury, which consisted in the preparation of a very cheap, economical chicken soup. Okay, so now we're going to learn how to make chicken soup. Let's go. This first conjury of his is called German chicken soup. Gurdjieff's German chicken soup recipe, and its execution is likewise extremely interesting, namely as follows. Into a very commodious pot, sit on the hearth, common water is poured, and then a few very finely chopped leaves of parsley are strewn into it, okay? Okay, water, parsley. Then both doors of the kitchen must be opened wide, or if there is only one door, a window must be opened wide. And while the incantation is very loudly pronounced, a chicken must be chased through the kitchen at full speed. Alrighty. Upon this, a most delicious chicken soup is already hot in the pot. Huh. Wow. Ghost chicken soup, what? I heard further that during the years of that great process of reciprocal destruction, the beings of Germany made use of this conjury on a colossal scale. This method of preparing chicken soup having proved in practice to be, as it were, good or at least extremely economical. The reason is that a single chicken could do duty for quite a long time because it could be chased and chased until for some reason or other the chicken all by itself, as it is said, went on strike and declined to breathe any longer. This almost feels like, you know, what is it, Christ making feeding an entire company on just like 2 loaves of bread and fish or whatever. It's like you're just kind of magically pulling multiple things out of one thing. Just 2 loaves of bread can fill an entire population. You're pulling it. It's like just one chicken, make it run through the kitchen, and all of a sudden, the parsley stock on the stove just turns into chicken soup. And that just happens again and again and again. Is this like... It sounds like almost like a, whoop, my dog just knocked over my little awning in the back. Ignore that, guys. Ignore that. And in the event that the chicken resisted the infection of hypocrisy, in spite of so there's some kind of infinite energy generation here. The pulling out of something from nothing. Ex nihilo, the creation, the reason why I say this is infinite energy, some kind of call to infinite energy is, remember this book, the reason for creation is to break the law of entropy. There is something that is created, because the law of entropy, if you just have a system, an energy flowing in that system, everything eventually settles down, or just kind of repeats and cycles. So something is happening and breaking the law of entropy by creating, matter is coming into creation. Something is multiplied and breaking the law of thermodynamics. That's what magic is. In spite of it having existed among your favorites, and indeed did cease to wish to breathe the air any longer, then for this eventuality, as I have afterwards learned, a common custom was established there among the beings of that group called Germany. Namely, when chicken went on strike, its owners would very solemnly roast it in the oven, and for this solemn occasion would unfailingly invite all their relatives to dinner. Another guy in the chat, yo, yo, yo. It is interesting to notice also that another professor of theirs, also famous, named Steiner, hello, in the course of his what are called scientific investigations of supernatural phenomena, Steiner, is this the Steiner mentioned? Okay, just a second, guys, just a second. My dog's trying to fit his way around. He's blind, so he's just tripping balls now. In the course of his scientific investigations of supernatural phenomena, mathematically established that on the occasions when these chickens were served at these invitation dinners, always their owners would recite the same thing. Very interesting. Namely, every hostess... Sorry, I just moved my fan. Hopefully that's not being picked up by the recorder. Tell me if it's a little choppy. Namely, every hostess rolling her eyes to heaven and pointing to the chicken would say with great feeling that it was the famous Pamir pheasant, and that it had been specifically sent to them from Pamir by their dear nephew, who resided there as consul for their great fatherland. Huh. On that planet, there exist in general conjuries for every possible kind of purpose. Is this Gurdjieff just kind of making fun of, like, conjurations and kind of old magic books? These conjuries began multiplying particularly after many of the beings of this peculiar planet had become specialists in supernatural phenomena, and came to be called occultists, spiritualists, theosophists, violet magicians, chiromants, chiromancy is palm reading, and so forth. What are you doing? My dog is tripping. Oh my god. Besides being able to create supernatural phenomena, these specialists also knew very well how to make opaque look transparent. Interesting. This same American prohibition of the consumption of alcohol can serve us yet again. This American prohibition of the consumption of alcohol can serve us yet again as an excellently illuminating example of understanding to what degree the possibilities for the crystallization of data for being reflection are atrophied in these contemporary responsible power-possessing beings in respect of the fact that such an absurdity is being actually repeated there. Very interesting. So being reflection has not crystallized properly, and then the surplus of money has allowed people to just act frivolously with it and go into all forms of theosophy and spiritualism. There on that continent, everybody without exception, thanks to this prohibition, now consumes this same alcohol, even those who in other circumstances would probably never have consumed it. There on the continent America, the very same is occurring with the consumption of alcohol as occurred with the chewing of the seeds of the poppy by the beings of the country Mariplesi. Yeah, so alcohol has become a religion in of itself. The difference is that in the country of Mariplesi, the beings were then addicted to the use of at least genuine poppy seeds, whereas in America, the beings now consume any liquid that comes their way, provided only that it bears the name of some alcoholic liquid existing somewhere on their planet. So a lot of the alcohol he's saying is no good. It's just water that tastes bad. That's how I feel about beer. I'm one of those people, I don't get beer. I don't get beer. Like, I drank it once and I was like, this is disgusting. Why would anyone want to drink this? And to this day, I truly believe that beer is a conspiracy theory from beer companies to sell more beer, and everyone's just peer pressuring each other into drinking beer, and it actually just tastes bad and no one wants to admit it. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel. I'm more of a cider guy. Cider gang, rise up. Anyway. And another difference is that in respect of concealing their consumption of the prohibited product from government eyes, The contemporary beings, so I'm tripping balls, now breeding on the continent America are not by any means so naive as were the beings of the Mariplesi epoch. To what lengths your contemporary favorites have gone in this respect, you can understand very well from the following examples. At the present time, there in that place, every young man with his mother's milk scarcely dry on his lips infallibly carries with him what seems to be a perfectly ordinary harmless cigarette case or cigar case, and sitting in a restaurant or in one of their famous dance halls, he casually produces the cigarette case or cigar case from his pocket, and everybody around imagines, of course, that he is about to smoke. But not a bit of it. He just gives a peculiar little twist to this cigarette case or cigar case of his, when presto, a diminutive tumbler appears in his left hand, whereupon, with his right hand, he slowly and quietly pours out himself from the cigarette case or cigar case into his diminutive tumbler of some kind of liquid, probably scotch or whiskey, but concocted, as I have already told you, on some barge of American coast. That's very funny. So people are coming in with like cigar cases and being like, yes, all getting empty glasses and then just like pouring from their cigar case. You know, liquid. Just drinking in public, day drinking. Everyone, beer is good, but also kind of gross, like coffee, lol. Yeah, I guess that. Cactus says, do love cider, though. Tough hangover, though. Mead and sake. Ooh, we got a man of culture here for Tyler. Yeah, mead is good. I went to... Sake, you know what I'm going to say? If you go to Japan and you get that warm sake slaps. Like, for real. There's also, you know the best sake I ever had? Random off topic here. If you go to Japan in December when it's like snowing, in the north, there's this like pink sake that they only brew. Oh my god. Bruh. That they only brew at one time of the year. And it's... Thank you, honey. And so pink sake. There's this pink sake that's brewed at only one time of the year, that 1 month. And it's like this... Yeah, this pink rice sake only brewed in December or something in one place. I think it's in Niseko, up in Hokkaido in Japan. If you were to go there in December, they make like pink sake in these bottles, and it's freaking delicious. That's like probably the best sake. But even if you like don't get to go there, you just go to Japan, like Tokyo for a day or something. Get some warm sake, bro. Fantastic. Right, during my observations, there are, at that time, I once witnessed still another picture. In one of the said restaurants sat 2 young American women, not far from my table. Okay, let's see how these ladies get drunk. An attendant of this restaurant, or as they say, a waiter, served with them a bottle of some mineral water and a couple of glasses. Oh, August Sunny in the chat as well. One of the women gave a certain little twist to the handle of her fashionable umbrella, whereupon a liquid, obviously also scotch or whiskey, or something of the kind, began likewise to flow very quietly and very slowly from the handle into her glasses. This is crazy. People just getting drunk at this period of time, huh? And so this is why you don't ban things. It just becomes fashionable to do it. It becomes more fashionable to do it. And the more elaborate you have, the more fashionable a way you have to do it, the more fashionable you become. In short, my boy, the same is being repeated on this continent America, as also took place quite recently in the large community called Russia. There, the power-possessing responsible beings also prohibited the consumption of the famous Russian vodka, with the consequence that these beings very soon adapted themselves to consume, instead of this vodka, the no less famous hanja? My boys, from the effects of which thousands of these unfortunate beings are still dying there daily. Oh. But in the present case, we must certainly give the contemporary American beings their due. In their skill at concealing their consumption of this famous alcohol from the authorities, they are infinitely more civilized than the beings of the community. Russia. Take that, Russia. Well, my boy, to avoid the bustle of the street, I entered a typical New York restaurant, and having taken a seat at one of the tables there, began gazing out of the window at the crowd. So remember, he's gone to meet his business mister. Guy didn't show up, and so he's in a New York restaurant across the street. As it is common custom there on your planet, when people sit in a restaurant or any other such public place, always and without fail to pay what they called money for something for the profit of the proprietor of the establishment, I did the same and also ordered for myself a glass of their famous, what is called orangeade, like lemonade but orange. This famous American drink consists of the juice squeezed from oranges, or from the famous what is called their grapefruit, and the beings of that continent drink it always and everywhere in incredible quantities. It must be admitted that this famous orangeade of theirs does occasionally refresh them in hot weather, but on the other hand, in its action upon what are called the mucous membranes of the stomach and intestines, this drink of theirs is still another of the many factors there which, taken together, are gradually bringing about, although slowly, yet inexorably certainly, the destruction of that unnecessary and negligible function called the digestive function of the stomach. Really? That's very interesting. Fun facts, really personal information here. My grandpa, who I never met, died that way. So I had this like estranged grandpa on my dad's side. My dad and my grandpa were like estranged from each other for years. And they reconnected really late in life. Like my dad reconnected with his dad. And like I never met my grandpa. And it was kind of this thing, they reconnected and they kind of made peace. But then he died like really suddenly. And when the autopsy came, how he died is he literally drank like an entire bottle of grapefruit juice every day for breakfast. And what happened is the acidity from the grapefruit juice bore a hole in his stomach. And so his stomach was just like leaking stomach acid into his body, and his body just like gave up one day. He died of like system shock or something. I was like, oh, and you know, it's one of those things. Is like my grandpa died, never met him, so I'm like, so, you know, sorry, Dad. Oh, but like, I was like, what? Oh, he died of drinking grapefruit juice, bruh. That's so crazy that like Gurdjieff predicted how my grandpa would die 100 years ago. This is crazy. And so that's like an American fashion, just to continuously drink like orange, lemon, and grapefruit juice. And he's saying it basically has a bad function on their digestion. Do you think that's how like Ray Peat died? Because Ray Peat also like drank a lot of orange juice as well, didn't he? Huh. Very interesting. Yeah. Watch out, guys. Orange juice can kill you. Well then, sitting in the said restaurant with this famous orangeade and watching the passerbyers, in the hope of seeing among them the Mr. I awaited, I began casually looking around at the objects in the restaurant also. On the table at which I was sitting, I saw, among other things, also what is called the menu of the restaurant. Menu, there on your planet, is the name given to a sheet of paper on which are written the names of all the varieties of food and drink available in that restaurant, in the said restaurant. Reading the contents on this paper, I found, among other things, that no fewer than 78 different dishes could be ordered there that day. This staggered me, and I wondered what on earth kind of stove these Americans must have in their kitchens to be able to prepare 78 dishes on it for just one day. Oh shit, wait, Crimdim in the chat, I got an ulcer from drinking screwdrivers every day. Damn, you got an ulcer from drinking screwdriver. I guess the drink screwdriver, you're not just drinking like glasses of metal. Damn, you must have been drinking a lot of screwdrivers though, man. I ought to add that I had been on every one of the continents there and had been the guest of a great many beings of different castes. I had seen food prepared innumerable times, and also in my house. So I already more or less knew that to prepare a single dish, at least 2 or 3 saucepans were required. And I reckoned that as these Americans prepared 78 dishes in one kitchen, they would certainly need about 300 pots and pans. I had the fancy to see for myself how it was possible to accommodate on one stove 300 saucepans, so I decided to offer what is called there a good tip to the waiter who served me with the orangeade to let me see the kitchen of the restaurant with my own eyes. The waiter somehow arranged it, and I went to the kitchen. When I got there, what do you think? What kind of picture did I see? A stove of 100 pots and pans? Not on your life. I saw there only a small, what is called their midget gas stove, such as what are called old bachelors and man-haters. Oh, what? Man-hater is an old name for a stove? That's great. I gotta start calling stoves man-haters. Sorry, crimmed him in chat. It was Boston and I'm from Kentucky. I had to stay warm somehow. That's a very American thing to say. An Internet Explorer. Your teeth started drinking from strawberry lemonade every day. Strawberry lemonade sounds delicious though, so that sounds like something I would do. Anyway, so he saw in this restaurant they just had a single man-hater, that is to say, worthless spinsters. Well, usually have it in their rooms. Oh my god, that's why it's called a man-hater. Ah. That's funny. By the side of this pimple of a stove sat an extremely fat-necked cook of Scotch origin, reading the newspaper, inseparable from every American. He was reading, it seems the newspaper, The Times. I looked around in amazement also at the neck of this cook. While I was thus looking around in astonishment, a waiter came into the kitchen from the restaurant and in peculiar English ordered a certain very elaborate dish from this fat-necked cook. I think I may as well tell you that I then also noticed from his accent that the waiter who ordered this dish with a fancy name had only recently arrived there from the continent of Europe, obviously with the dream of filling his pockets there with American dollars. With that dream, in fact, about these American dollars, which indeed every European who has never been to America and which now allows no one in Europe to sleep in peace. When this aspirant to an American multimillionaire, Madam, had ordered the said fancy dish from the fat-necked cook, the latter got up from his place, without haste, and very heavily, and first of all took down from the wall a small what is called bachelor's frying pan. Then having lighted his dwarf stove, he put the frying pan on it. Still moving ponderously, he then went over to one of the many cupboards, took from it a tin of some canned food, opened it, emptied its contents into the frying pan. Then in the same way, he went over to another cupboard and again took out a tin of some canned food, but this time he put only a little of the contents into the frying pan. Having stirred the resulting mixture, he put the whole lot with precision on a plate, which he set on the table, and again sat down in his former place and resumed the interrupted reading of his newspaper. Crazy. Back in the day, that's how they did it. That's how they had, like, just menus and menus of so much different types of food, because they all cooked canned food. I guess this is where... this would have been found out and became a thing, and like, oh, restaurants serve canned food or food from cans, and it became like, you know, a Povo thing. So to be a fancy restaurant, you wouldn't serve it from food, but then it became like pre-prepared meals were then frozen and then like were heated up. Because it's all about speed in restaurants. It's all about speed. And then, of course, there's the newest fashion nowadays. I think, where did it start, maybe 90s or 80s? Is people used to start saying you only go to a restaurant where, you know, you have the hole in the wall so you can see into the kitchen. If the restaurant lets you see into their kitchen, you know it's a good restaurant. And so therefore you get to see everyone cooking from scratch. The only problem with that is then you have to cook fresh, and then you have to eventually start limiting the number of things on your menu. So that's, I guess, what happens nowadays, but that's very funny. Gurdjieff's experience of American cuisine, he's just like, Jesus Christ, they just cook canned food. Oh my god. The waiter who had ordered this fancy dish soon returned to the kitchen, bearing a very large what is called copper tray, on which were a vast quantity of hollow metal what is called fashionable cutlery. Having placed the dish with the strange food on the said tray, he carried the whole into the restaurant. When I returned and resumed my seat at my table, I saw that at another table quite near a Mr. was sitting who was smacking his lips while eating the dish which I had chanced to see prepared in the kitchen. Looking again out the window into the street, I eventually discerned the Mr. I expected in the crowd, so settling my bill at once, I left the restaurant. And now, my boy, maintaining the form of mentation of our dear teacher, I might as well tell you also a little about the speech of these American beings. You must know that before my arrival on the continent, I could already speak the tongue of the beings that continent, namely what is called the English tongue. But from the very first day of my arrival in the capital of this North America, I already experienced great inconvenience in my verbal intercourse, because as it turned out, although these beings use this English tongue for verbal intercourse among themselves, this English tongue of theirs is rather special, and in fact quite peculiar. So having felt this inconvenience, I made up my mind to learn this peculiar conversational English of theirs. On the third day after my arrival there, as I was on my way to my newly acquainted Mr., specially to ask him to recommend me a teacher for this English tongue, I suddenly saw reflected on the sky by projectors an American advertisement with the words School of Languages by the System of Mr. Chatterlitz, 13 North 293rd Street. Is that some American slang, Tyler? Hey, the 2-0 Youts better get out of here. Yeah, that's... did Gurdjieff interact with Boston slang when he came? And he was just like, what's going on here? Hey, Gurdjie! I wonder what Gurdjieff would have thought of all the different slangs of America. Surely, I wonder what Gurdjieff would have thought of, like, really weird, like, yeah, Brooklyn slang, Jesus Christ. The languages at the times when they were taught were set forth, and of the American English language in particular, it was stated, among other things, that it could be learned in from 5 minutes to 24 hours. Okay. At first, I could not make head or tail of it, but I decided all the same to go the next morning to the address indicated. When the next day I found this Mr. Chatterlitz, he received me himself in person, and when he heard that I wished to learn the American English language by his system, he explained to me, first of all, that this conversational language could be learned by his system in their forms, each form corresponding to some special requirement. The first form, he said, is the conversational language for a man who is obliged to earn here among us our American dollars. The second form is required for a man who, although not in need of our dollars, nevertheless likes to do dollar business, and furthermore, in order that in his social relations with our Americans, everybody will think that he is not just a nobody, but a real gentleman with an English upbringing. August Sunny says, I think I'm going to coat my higher being bodies in the color turquoise. Good luck with that, bruh. You should coat it with all the colors of the rainbow. So then you just have you're covering all your bases, just in case. You know what I mean? Just in case. Reclaim the rainbow, bruh. Reclaim the rainbow. As for the third form of the English language, this form is required by anybody who wishes to be able to procure here, there, and everywhere at any hour Scotch whisky. As the time for learning the second form of the English language by this system suited me best, I decided to pay him immediately the dollars he charged in order to know the secret of his system. When I had paid him the dollars, he charged, and he had seemingly quite casually, but in reality not without that avidity which he has already become proper to all the beings of your planet, placed my dollars in an inside pocket. He explained to me that in order to learn this second form, only 5 words had to be memorized, namely, maybe, perhaps, tomorrow, oh, I see, and all right. These are the 5 words you need to know to master American English. The American language. That's pretty funny. That's really interesting, actually. I want to, copy that down. Just on a little note. Oh my god, it's going to make me. Lamal. He added that if I had occasion to converse with one or more of their misters, I should only need to utter any one of these 5 words every now and then. Yes. I think I do that. Hey, Voice in the Wilderness in the chat. As an American, I can confirm. Yes. Thank you, Voice. That will be quite enough, he added, to convince everybody that in the first place you know the English language very well, and secondly, that you are an old hand at doing dollar business. Although the system of this highly esteemed Chatterlitz was very original and meritorious, yet I never had occasion to put it into practice. And the occasion did not arise because the next day I met by chance in the street an old acquaintance, and as he called editor from the continent of Europe, who in conversation confided to me an even more ideal secret for the American language. When I told him, among other things, that I had been the day before to see to Mr. Chatterlitz about the local language, and had told him a little about the system, he replied, Do you know what, my dear doctor? As you are a subscriber to our paper over there, I cannot help revealing to you a certain secret language here. And he said further, knowing several of our European languages, you can, by employing this secret of mine, be master of the language here to perfection, and indeed converse about anything you wish, and not simply make others think that you know the English language, for which purpose, I do not deny, the system of this Chatterlitz is indeed excellent. He exclaimed further that if, when pronouncing any word taken from any European language, you imagine that you have a hot potato in your mouth, then some word of the English language is in general bound to result. Interesting. And if you imagine that this same hot potato is furthermore well sprinkled with ground red pepper, then you will already have pronunciation of the local American English language. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Interesting. Kind of, has everyone seen that one vid of it seems like Middle Eastern farmers, and one of them says, "Hey, look at my American friend," and he points to his friend, and the guy just kind of speaks. It's really funny because he has this American intonation, but he's just speaking random sounds. I feel like maybe he's doing something similar to the bigger potato. Ha 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 ha. China. Oh my god, actually, has everyone seen, the Red Note app that everyone's talking about now? On there, if you like scroll long enough, there's a Chinese guy that does Chinese. He does Donald Trump, but it's like perfect. But he's a Chinese Donald Trump. It's crazy. It's actually very funny. He advised me, moreover, not to be too timid in choosing words from the European languages, since the English language in general consisted of a fortuitous concourse of almost all the European languages, and hence that the language contains several words for every ordinary idea, with the consequence that you almost always hit on the right word. A. Odara in the chat. Hi, hello. What the hell are we doing? We are reading Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson by Gurdjieff, and right now, Gurdjieff is basically making fun of American speaking. Buenito, gringos. Yeah, we're making fun of Americans. Come join. And suppose that, without knowing it, you use a word entirely absent from this language. No great harm is done. At worst, your hero will only think that he himself is ignorant of it. Yeah. All you have to do is just to bear in mind the said hot potato and no more baloney about it. I guarantee this secret, and I can safely say that if, on exactly following my advice, your language here does not prove to be ideal, then you may stop your subscription. Several days later, I had to go to the city of Chicago. This city is the second in size on that continent, and is, as it were, a second capital of North America. On seeing me off for Chicago, the Mr., my New York acquaintance, gave me a letter of introduction to a certain Mr. there, so he's getting introductions from Misters to Misters. As soon as I arrived in the city of Chicago, I went straight to this said Mr. This Chicago Mr. turned out to be a very amiable and most obliging. His name was Mr. Bellybutton. I guess this is a chunky boy. For the evening of the first day, this amiable and obliging Mr. Bellybutton suggested my accompanying him to the house of some of his friends, so that, as he expressed it, I should not be bored in quite a strange city. Andy joins cults in the chat, asking, is Gurdjieff actually Beelzebub? Is this an outlandish... So no, that's my theory as well. I think other people parrot it. There's some other people who say, when you read this book, and if you read Meetings of Remarkable Men, you'll notice similarities. Like, I believe in Meetings of Remarkable Men, Gurdjieff takes Meetings of Remarkable Men is the next book, which is, like, Gurdjieff's actually life, him going around meeting remarkable men, and there's one bit where he like takes a boat ride, and the captain of the boat has the same name as the captain of the ship of Karnak in this book. So there's these correlating interplays, and it's very heavily implied that Beelzebub himself is Gurdjieff. And I would go so far as to say the 6 descents that Beelzebub takes onto the planet Earth are actual literal past lives that Gurdjieff remembers, that he's like kind of inserting information in and kind of giving this genealogy of man through his eternal memory, which is why it's a valuable input and valuable knowledge to have. It's very interesting. And so he's kind of, Beelzebub is Gurdjieff, and we, the viewer, are Hassian. ChatGPT made you feel foolish for suggesting it? You know, it's actually quite interesting. With, like, AI, I always like one litmus test to see if an AI is good is I'll ask an AI, give me a comparison of the teachings of Gurdjieff with, like, Edmund Husserl, and see if it doesn't. And if it, like, makes connections and actually kind of, like, gives you the proper phenomenology to fourth way pipeline, then it's, like, a good... And in a kind of a unique way, if it just feels like it's, like, giving you a Wikipedia page, it's like, yeah, whatever. But if it gives you a good kind of flavor, then that's how that's always how, like, I judge an AI. Oh, that's interesting. True River King says, yes, it's Gurdjieff talking to us. Note, he is not talking to his son. Gurdjieff Beelzebub's tales to his grandson. He's talking to the next generation. In other words, those of us who did not have a direct contact with him. That's, oh my god. Oh, blew my mind. Blew my mind, True River King. It's all falling into place now. The entire book makes sense now. So reading this book is how we connect with the master, the root of this tradition. Anyway, so Beelzebub meets Mr. Bellybutton in Chicago, and Mr. Bellybutton suggests to accompany him to a house of another friend. So keep in mind, this guy has come to America, got connected to a guy in New York, who connected him to a guy in Chicago, who's now going to take him to a friend's house. That's where this story is going. So he, of course, agreed. When we arrived, we found there a fair number of young American beings, guests like ourselves. All the guests were exceedingly gay. America confirmed. And very merry. It's Christmas. They were telling funny stories, in turn, and the laughter from these stories of theirs lingered in the room like the smoke on a day when the wind is south over the chimneys of the American factories where the American sausages called hot dogs are prepared. That's such a very funny line of prose, because he says something profound there, like a room where people have laughed in has a warmness in it, but then he equates the warmness to hot dog smoke from American chimneys. That's hilarious. As someone who likes, good literature, that is a hilarious line of prose there. As I also find funny stories amusing, that evening of mine in the city of Chicago passed very gaily indeed. All this would have been quite sensible and very delightful if it had not been for one feature of the stories told. That first evening, which greatly astonished and perplexed me. And that is, I was astonished by their what is called ambiguity and obscenity. Ooh. Gurdjieff Beelzebub impressed by American obscenity. I think all in all, everybody has a love-hate relationship with America, including us non-Americans. The ambiguity and obscenity of these stories were such that any single one of these American storytellers could have given a dozen points to Boccaccio, famous there on the planet Earth. Boccaccio is the name of a certain writer who wrote, for the beings of the earth, the very instructive book called the Decameron. So the Decameron is one of those medieval tales, but it has a lot of kind of filth stories in it. What's the famous story of the Decameron is the one where a guy does a kind of a Romeo and Juliet thing out to, he's standing and he's calling to a woman in the tower, and the woman is leading him on, and she's actually sleeping with another lover, and the other lover, so the lover says to the woman, it's like, hey, you should troll this guy and ask him for a kiss and stick your ass out of the window. And she basically, calls to her lover, oh, Romeo, give me a sweet kiss. And it's so dark and Romeo's like, of course. And he leans into the window, and it's so dark that he doesn't realize that so he leans forward and he kisses the girl's ass. And then he kind of pulls away and is like, oh, what? And kind of runs off, and the couple inside are laughing and having a good time, and Romeo basically comes back with a hot poker, like a hot iron poker, and says, oh, Juliet, give me another one of your kisses. And this time the couple inside find it so funny, they're like, yes, give him another one. But this time the guy does it. The woman calls to him and says, oh, yes, I'm leaning out, and the guy sticks his ass out the window, and the guy on the ground just rams the poker up a dude's ass. And that's literally a story from the Decameron. And apparently that would that just went down in medieval times. They loved that kind of humor. I think that got like made into a movie, like they did an anthology movie of a whole bunch of the stories in the Decameron. What's her name? Audrey Plaza was in one with that other girl that's in everything, and they did like two nuns. They were in the story with the two nuns. It's been a while. I'm pretty sure that's the Decameron story, the one where the guy gets the hot poker in the ass. But anyway, so Beelzebub is basically in this American house and everyone's making dirty jokes. And he's like, bro, they could match the Decameron. That's how filthy and obscene these Americans are. Okay, checks out. R.I.P. Gurdjieff would have loved TikTok. Gurdjieff would have loved Twitter. I swear. He would have just been like, oh, look at all of this. It would have been like prime real estate to sit back passively and absorb the data. Absorb being data from the entirety of humanity. Altana says, new Netflix series. Okay, so did it come out on Netflix as a series? Because I didn't actually see the Netflix series. I just kind of like saw something coming out and I was like, oh, they're making a movie out of it? Okay, oh, Crimdom saw it. Nice. But it was good. Okay. So it's a Netflix series. The Decameron. Check out the Decameron Netflix series. For old school filth. Old school, not just modern filth. We are intellectuals here. We want that prime, like cultured filth. So it is very widely read there at the present time and is the favorite among contemporary beings breeding there on all continents and belonging to almost all communities there. The following day, also in the evening, this kind Mr. Bellybutton took me again to some still other friends of his. Here also were a large number of young American beings, both male and female, sitting in various corners of a very large room, conversing quietly and placidly. Audrey Plaza is a gift, says Crimdim. Indeed. I'm pro any girl who can pull off a good goth lick. Look. Hey, Tyler, thank you for the 20. I'm here for highbrow filth. Damn straight. Damn straight. Not that lowbrow filth. Give us that highbrow filth. Prime uncultured filth. Yes, voices. So when we were seated, a pretty young American girl soon came and sat down beside me and began chatting with me. So she would have been interested in this odd continent, of this odd person from a far-off land. A curious, pretty young American girl with Gurdjieff. I wonder where this is going. As is usual there, I took up the conversation and we chatted about anything and everything. She asking me, among other things, many questions about the city of Paris. In the midst of the conversation, this American, as they say, young lady, suddenly, for no earthly reason at all, began stroking my neck. Uh-oh. I immediately thought, how kind of her. She must certainly have noticed a flea on my neck and is now stroking the place to allay the irritation. Sorry, I just read Tyler's comment there. Pound Town. Yeah, he's, sounds like this small American girl wants to go to Pound Town. Population Gurdjieff. But when I noticed that all the young American beings present were also oh my god, Mr. Bellybutton took Beelzebub to a swingers party. I was much astonished and could not understand what it was all about. My first supposition concerning the fleas no longer held good because it was impossible to suppose that everybody had a flea on his neck. I began speculating what it was all about, but try as I might, I could give myself no explanation whatever. Only afterwards, when we left the house and were in the street, I asked Mr. Bellybutton for an explanation of it all. He immediately burst into unrestrained laughter and called me a simpleton and a hick. Then calming down a bit, he said, "What a queer guy you are. Why, we have been to a petting party. Oh, baby. Oh, baby." Gurdjieff went to a swingers party, confirmed. Summer lovin' had me a blast. And still laughing at my naivete, he explained that the day before, we had also been to a party, but to a story party. And tomorrow, he continued, I was planning to take you to a swimming party, where young people bathe together, of course, all dressed in special costumes. Oh, now he's going to go to a pool party. Bro, Americans and their parties. Bro, growing up, remember like what is it, the teen movies, the American, like, high school movies that we all had, like, growing up in, like, the 90s and early 2000s. That shit was crazy. That shit was so, as a non-American, like, Americans, you all experienced that, but non-Americans, we didn't have pool parties and, like, high school parties and stuff, or maybe, like, someone did, or, like, there'd be, like, just one person who did with their group of friends or something. Like, and in, like, one of the advanced years, but it's like, we all just, the rest of the world, you don't know this, America, but the rest of the world, we just, like, looked in at those movies and were like, is that just what America is like? And it's like, here, this is the culture that was fostered. Where all of those movies came from was even back then, it was all about just going to different parties for different things. The party race. God damn. I guess, like, dinner parties were a thing on the continent of Europe. And when people in America started doing them, they just kind of jazzed them up a bit. Let's have a party at a pool. Let's have a costume party. Let's have a murder mystery party. It's almost like the highbrow aristocratic thing on the continent kind of transplanted to America, but then became the domain of, like, all Americans. And that's how parties kind of came about. Very interesting. I hosted a porn and pajama party in college, says Tyler. Whoa! Hell, so it was the way, is that mean you come in pajamas and everyone brings their famous porn? Their favorite porn? Is that what it was? So someone, like, you're just having a party at night, everyone gets in pajamas and everyone like here's Debbie Does Dallas. And then you have your one friend who's just the connoisseur who brings, like, Backdoor Sluts 9. Jesus. We only did for D&D and stuff in my friend group when we were gonna have a big night. Hey, D&D groups, man. I wish I got into D&D younger. I partied way too much in high school and throughout my Wade 20 says voices. Hey, some of us never partied enough. When he saw that same look of perplexed astonishment still remains on my face, he asked, "But if for some reason or other you don't like such tame affairs, we can go to others that are not open to everybody. There are lots of such parties here, and I am a member of several of them. Mr. Bellybutton is a player. At these parties, which are not open to everybody, we can, if you like, have something more substantial." But I did not take advantage of this kindness. Substantial, is this like... Did Gurdjieff meet, like... Is Mr. Bellybutton going to take him on, like, an Eyes Wide Shut tour kind of thing? Is that what he means by that? But I did not take advantage of this kindness, of this obliging and exceedingly amiable Mr. Bellybutton, because the next morning I received a telegram, which made it necessary for me to return to New York, so he got the hell out of there. At this point of his tale, Beelzebub suddenly became thoughtful, and after a rather protracted pause, sighing deeply, he continued to speak thus. "The next day, I did not go by the morning train. He took the midnight train, as I had decided on receiving the telegram, but delayed my departure until the night train." Hey, he really did take the midnight train. "Going anywhere. He's just on a journey. As the cause of the delay of my departure may well illustrate for you the evil resulting from a certain invention of these American beings, which is very widely spread over the whole of your planet, and which is one of the chief causes of the continued, so to say, dwindling of the psyche. Of all the other three-brained beings of your unfortunate planet, I shall tell you about it a little more in detail. Just this maleficent invention of the beings of this continent, what is the invention, Gurdjieff? Tell us. Which I now intend to explain to you, has not only been the cause of the acceleration of the tempo of the still greater dwindling of the psyche of all the three-brained beings breeding on the unfortunate planet of yours, but it is the cause also that in the beings of all the other continents of recent times, there is already completely destroyed that being function, which it is proper for all three-brained beings to have, and which was the one single function which until the last century arose in their presence of its own accord, namely the being function which is everywhere called sane instinct to believe in reality." Bro. Okay, so what is the thing that Americans invented that decays the instinct to believe in reality? In this place of this function, very necessary for every three-brained being, another special, very definite function gradually crystallized, whose action induces in its bearer a continuous doubt about everything. This maleficent invention of theirs they called advertising. Oh, so advertising destroyed our instinct to believe in reality. Very interesting. And Americans did invent that, yes. Better to understand what follows, I must first tell you that several years before this trip of mine to America, once when traveling on the continent of Europe, I bought myself some books to read in the train to pass away the prospective long and tedious railway journey. In one of these books, written by a very famous writer there, I read an article about this America, in which a great deal was said about what is called the slaughterhouses existing in that same city, Chicago. Slaughterhouse is the name, therefore, a special place where three-brained terrestrial beings carry on the destruction of the existence of those beings of various other forms, whose planetary bodies they are addicted to using for their first being food, again owing to those abnormally established conditions of ordinary being existence. Moreover, executing this manifestation of theirs in these special establishments, they even say and imagine that they do it from necessity, and as it were in a perfect, what they call humane way. This said, terrestrial contemporary very famous writer, the author of this book rapturously described as an eyewitness, in his opinion, superlatively well-organized slaughterhouse of this same city, Chicago. He described the perfection of its machines, of every possible kind, and its marvelous cleanliness. Not only, he wrote, does humaneness to the beings of other forms reach this in this slaughterhouse the degree of divinity, but even the machines are so perfected that it is almost as if a live ox is driven through a door at one end, and some 10 minutes later, out the door at the other end, you could get, if you wished, hot sausages ready to eat. Finally, he specially emphasized that it was all done entirely by the perfected machines alone, without the touch of a human hand, as a consequence of which, as he said, everything was so clean and neat there that nothing could possibly be imagined cleaner and neater. Several years after reading that book, I chanced to read again almost the same thing about this Chicago slaughterhouse in a certain also serious Russian magazine, in which this slaughterhouse was lauded in the same way. Oh, Cactus asks, I'm late. This question, can I get an explanation of three-brained beings? Yes, so, humans. Humans are not just one thing. We are three things: intellect, emotion, and motor instincts. Although motor, instinct, and sex are technically three different cylinders, but you can combine them as one brain. So your motor functions, your emotions, and your intellect. You have data that comes out of your intellect. Well, you have thoughts, you have memory, cognition. Well, actually, cognition is just straight consciousness. Thought, memory, rationalizations, deductions, that's the intellect center. Emotions, feelings, sentiments, emoting. If someone didn't have an emotional center, they would technically still be able to, like hold a conversation, but it would be purely robotic. They wouldn't understand metaphor or anything like that. Sarcasm, irony, all of that comes from the emotional cylinder. Another thing, and then of course, motor, your habits, your movements. Actions can involve multiple ones, so dance is very technical, but can include the emotional cylinder. Writing poetry is intellectual, but includes the emotional cylinder. The whole idea is people have a center of gravity that they live in just one or the other, and the other brains kind of decline. If they live too much in the intellects, they're not that emotional and they don't work their motor cylinder. Or if they work into the motor cylinder, then they leave their intellect cylinder to kind of decay or on the wayside, and they just become, meatheads, that kind of thing. Or the emotional cylinder person doesn't have the capacity of the intellectual cylinder person, so instead of doing their taxes, they just cry and manipulate someone else into doing it for them. There's all these kind of different layers of people who have their center of gravity in one and not the other. The whole point is you must become a balanced being. Instead of becoming a man number 1, 2, or 3, you must walk the fourth way to become the fourth man. So that you are completely balanced and your personality doesn't migrate to just one cylinder. The way you can tell if someone is a fourth man is they have no problems. Because how you can tell if someone is a man 1, 2, or 3 is how they solve their problems. Man number 1 will punch his problems away or just solve them. So if you're man number 1, and it's like you want to make a veggie garden, you pick up a shovel and you go around back and you start digging. If you're a man number 3, the intellectual man, and you want to make a veggie garden, you go onto the internet and look at what vegetables suit each other, what things grow well together, what soil you should use, and 3 months later you still haven't even started. The emotional person will solve all of their problems emotionally. The second man will solve all of their problems emotionally. Via emotional manipulation, or they're good in relationships, and it's good to ask emotional people for relationship advice, but it's very funny when you see man number 3, who solves all of their problems, with their intellects. They're good at math, but when you see people in a relationship try to solve relationship problems with their intellectual cylinder, it doesn't go too well. But honey, those are the facts, slap. Things happen. So yeah, it is a trinity. But these are the different cylinders in our body which we observe and we gain data from. We gain data from the specific cylinders, and over time, we begin to see the links between the cylinders. We have a thought that always arises in our head. We repetitiously, just like we have physical habits, there are thoughts we think throughout the day that continuously come back to us. That one time in high school, cringe. We think about that every day, and when what happens to it? It's a thought that causes a cringe, and the cringe causes a restriction in our motor cylinder. In other words, our body becomes tense. Or there are certain times in the day we're sitting wrong, and our motor cylinder tenses, and the tenseness of the motor cylinder can create an emotional reaction, which causes thoughts to arise, which then have associations within our consciousness, which pull up memories, which then have other emotions attached into them. You see how this gets complex. So you just start by observing the cylinders separately, and eventually you notice your likes. Also, you can tell a man via their likes. A man via their likes, man number 1 will like watching things that include movement. So someone who does sports is man number 1, but someone who really likes watching sports is also man number 1. Man number 2 will obviously be an emotional person, and they'll love theater. Disney adults are all man number 2. They love Disney movies. Man number 3 loves the moniker of man number 3 is someone who walks into the room saying, "Have you heard the news?" or "Have you heard the latest scientific discovery?" They're like someone who does Sudoku in their pastime. That's a man number 3. There are lots of connections. So a man is betrayed. Your type is betrayed by what your likes are and how you solve your problems. The fourth man has no problems because his centers are balanced, so when a problem arises, he solves it with the correct center. A man number 1 is balanced. It's the archetype of Robert Heinlein's concept of the competent man. He can light a fire, he can play an instrument, he can sing a song, he can change a nappy. He can lead a group, he can follow along, he can follow orders, he can lead a group. It's the competent man who can do a little bit of everything. The jack of all trades, the man number 4, the great generalist. He has no problems because he can solve all of his problems as soon as they arise, and he's perfectly balanced, worked on all sides. That's man number 4. And then man number 4 is actually a long lacuna, because in actual fact, in the fourth way, it's man number 4, a more advanced version of man number 4. The man number 4 proper is the person who has flashes of the higher cylinders. That is the real man number 4, is someone who doesn't just have intellectual ideas, doesn't just have emotions and motor movements, but they have flashes of the higher functions. They understand, have a concept of the higher functions. So basically, man number 5 is someone who's connected to the higher cylinders proper. Man number 5 has a crystallized higher being body, and via that, they have telepathy. They have faculties, and those faculties really they're a litmus test that shows what, that shows that they've actually attained that. So when he says three-brained beings, an animal, like a worm, has a single brain. They just have a motor cylinder, and they just live one-dimensionally through the earth. A two-brained being is something like a mammal. Dogs have emotions, elephants have emotions, eagles, horses. They almost have an intelligence as well. But man is the only three-brained being. And if you have 3 brains, you have the potential. You have the potential to go further. And so it's that potential to go further. That's why we're important, because only 3-brained beings can crystallize higher being bodies. Anyway, so everyone in chat just went... Good. Started asking questions there. Anyway, we got that. So the 4th man then is the balanced man, yeah. So the 4th man is balanced man. Is there a good basic entry book for the 4th way? My fiance would love this, but has 0 occult knowledge. In Search of the Miraculous. A lot of people say Ouspensky's other book, The Psychological Possibility Evolution of Man, always forget the title, is better because it's thinner, but I like to say In Search of the Miraculous par excellence, because In Search of the Miraculous is a journey. It's Ouspensky's kind of journal of his process of where he goes and who he meets, and then, he meets Gurdjieff, and it's like a story, so it has a narrative, and he teaches through it. The end third of In Search of the Miraculous gets a little heavy because Ouspensky, eventually leaves Gurdjieff and does his own thing, and so the last part of that book is more speculative about hydrogens and different scales of the cosmos, but In Search of the Miraculous really is the standard entry book. So my dog is just wanting something. You want to go wee-wees? You want to go wee-wees? Okay, just a second, guys. I'll come back. Hold up. Okay. Let's go. Sorry about that, guys. My dog took a dump. He did that thing where it's like, you know when dogs come and they like take a dump, but then they just like hunch and then they walk a little bit and hunch again. You're like, come on, what is this? Pooping in segments? Anyway. What did everyone else ask? Ask about gins, I believe, starting. Paranormal, talking about gins in here. It's circuit from the miraculous, gnomes are spiritual earth creatures. Pick this up. Okay, cool. Oh, right. So, getting back to the book now. Now that we're back. Several years after reading this book, I chanced to read again almost the same thing. Oh yeah, Lord in the same way. After that, I heard. So this is the slaughterhouse in Chicago. And thereafter, I heard this Chicago slaughterhouse from 1,000 different beings, many of whom had been presumably eyewitness to the marvels they described. In short, before my arrival in the city of Chicago, I was already fully convinced that a marvel unprecedented on Earth existed there. I must mention here that I had always been greatly interested in these establishments of theirs, namely those places where your favorites destroyed the existence of various forms of terrestrial beings, and furthermore, from the time when I began organizing my observatory on the planet Mars, and had to do with various machines for it, I took always and everywhere a great interest in every other sort of machine as well. So when I happened to be in this same city of Chicago, I thought it would be inexcusable on my part not to use the opportunity to see this famous Chicago slaughterhouse. So in the morning on the day of my departure from there, I decided to go, accompanied by one of my new Chicago acquaintances, to inspect this rare construction of your favorites. Having arrived there, we took as our guide, on the advice of one of the assistants of the chief director, an employee of a branch of some bank there, which was connected with the slaughterhouse, and together with him we set off to inspect the place. Accompanied by him, we first of all went through the places where the unfortunate quadruped beings are driven, where they remain until their slaughter. This place was in no way different from all the other establishments of the kind on your planet, except that this peculiar place was on a considerably larger scale. On the other hand, it was very much dirtier than any of the slaughterhouses I had previously seen in other countries. Yeah, I know, right? Slaughterhouse tourism. Afterwards, we went through several more what are called annexes. One of them was the cold storage for the meat that was ready. In another, they destroyed the existence of the quadruped beings simply with hammers, and also stripped off their hide, again in the manner usual in other slaughterhouses. By the way, in passing through this last annex, I remember I then thought this place here is in all probability for the slaughter of cattle, intended especially for the Jews, who, as I already knew, in accordance with the code of their religion, destroy quadruped beings in a special way. He's talking about, like, I guess, kosher meats. This is a kosher meats place. Walking through the said annexes took rather a long time, and all the while I was waiting for the moment when we should eventually arrive at the section about which I had heard so much, and which I was determined to see without fail. Chicago slaughterhouses at the time were particularly disgusting, says Tyler. Makes sense. But when I expressed my wish to our guide to hasten onto that section, I learned that we had already seen everything there was to see in this famous Chicago slaughterhouse, and that no other section existed. I had not, my dear boy, seen there anywhere a single machine, unless one includes the rollers on the rails, which are in all slaughterhouses, for moving the heavy carcasses. And as for the dirt in this Chicago slaughterhouse, you could see as much as you liked. In cleanliness and general organization, the slaughterhouse of the city Tiflis, which I had seen 2 years before, could have given many points to this slaughterhouse of the city Chicago. In the Tiflis slaughterhouse, for example, you would not find anywhere on the floor a single drop of blood, whereas in Chicago slaughterhouse, everywhere, at every step, there were pools of it. Obviously, some company of American businessmen, inevitably resorting to advertising for every business in general, had to advertise the Chicago slaughterhouse, also in order to spread a false notion about it, totally unrelated to reality, over the whole planet. As in general, the rule there, they certainly did not spare their dollars in this case either. And since the scared being function of conscience, the sacred being function of conscience is completely atrophied among contemporary terrestrial, what are called journalists and reporters, the result is that in all your favorites breeding on all the continents there is crystallized just that definite monstrously exaggerated notion of the slaughterhouse of the notion of the houses of the city of Chicago. Yeah. Journalists and reporters. Ugh. I think there's a line from Kierkegaard, the philosopher, where he says, if my daughter was to fall into prostitution, I would still pray for her, but if my son became a journalist, I would give up all hope. And I'm like, that's a good line. I agree with you, I agree with you, Kiki. And it can be said indeed that they did so in true American fashion. On the continent of America, the three-brained beings have become so expert in this advertising of theirs that it is quite possible to apply to them the saying of our dear Mullah Nasser Eddin, which declares that man will become a friend of the cloven hoofs who perfects himself to such reason and such being that he can make an elephant out of a fly. They're all just shit talkers. They mastered that art. They have indeed become so skillful at making elephants out of flies, and they do it so often that already at the present time, on seeing a genuine American elephant, one has to remember oneself with the whole of one's being not to get the impression that it is only a fly. From Chicago, I returned again to New York, and as all my projects for the fulfillment of which I had come to this continent were then unexpectedly, rapidly, and rather successfully actualized, and seeing that the surrounding circumstances and conditions of the ordinary existence of the three-brained beings of that city turned out to be corresponding to what was required for my periodic complete rest, which had already become customary for me during my last personal sojourn on the surface of your planet. I decided to stay there longer and exist with the beings there merely according to the being associations inevitably flowing in me. Existing in the said way, in this central point of the being of this big contemporary group and rubbing shoulders on various occasions with various types among them, I just then, without any premeditation, but thanks only to my acquired habit of collating material, so to say, by the way, for those statistics of mine, which, as I have already told you, I gathered during the whole of my last personal sojourn among your favorites for the purpose chiefly of comparing the extent to which all the illnesses and all the strange what are called being subjective vices existing among the beings of the different groups are spread, constated a fact which greatly interested me, namely the fact that in the common presences of almost half of all the three-brained beings I met there, the preceding functioning of the transformation of the first being food is disharmonized. That is, as they themselves would say, their digestive organs are spoiled. Digestion is like one of the biggest health things in like the world at the moment, I think. Just in general. Definitely in the West. I always say I worked as a assistant nurse in an aged care facility, and I gotta say, from what I saw from all the old people there, if you want to live a long and healthy life, fire your doctor and just get a dietitian. Do you got a higher being body? What you coat it with? Asks August. Nah, not yet, bruh. We'll all get there event. We're all gonna make it, though. We're all gonna make it. What do you coat it with? You coat it with 12 hydrogen. Specifically hydrogen C12, that you then take to another octave. And that hydrogen taken to another octave constitutes a super sensible material that then can be coated and crystallized into a higher being body. So So digestive organs are spoiled, and that almost a quarter of them have, or are candidates for, that form of disease specific to beings there, which they call impotence, thanks to just which disease a great many of the contemporary beings of your planet are forever deprived of the possibility of continuing their species. Lamau. Now, we're getting close to the 2-hour mark. I said we'd cut this up, so we've gone through about 20 pages today. So I think maybe we'll call it there. Just gonna get that little stamp there, just to mark where I'm at. And we might call it there for today, guys. So, thank you all for coming along. If you want to follow along, for everyone who's just dropped into chat, you can come to this site, which is just gurdjieff.org, and you scroll down to the bottom to the library, primary texts, and you can download the PDF that I use for readings. Other than that, thank you for coming along today. If you want to support the channel, give a like and subscribe, or you can become a YouTube member to help support the channel. There's also one of the membership levels allows you access to the secret Telegram group where you can come and hang out. Talk to me directly if you want. And besides that, yeah, I've dropped a new video recently. Give that a like as well. Check it out, the Atlantean magic vid. Good old Dion Fortune. Fine free fine. Can't believe you're still going. Had to step out. We'll catch up. Yeah, no, please do, please do. Thank you for all the work, says Tyler. Thank you all for coming along and being here on this journey. So we'll leave it there for today, guys, and we will be back. We'll be back next week to continue along chapter 32, Beelzebub's Time in America.